I'm Evelyn Brooks, a 54-year-old teacher from Austin, Texas. I thought my daughter's wedding would be the happiest day of my life. Instead, she threw me out in front of 200 guests, all because of the dress I wore. That public humiliation shattered me. But what I didn't know was that losing everything would lead me to finally find myself. Before we begin, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I should have known something was wrong. When Brandon whispered in Haley's ear, the Platinum Gardens ballroom glowed with 200 candles, each flame casting shadows across tables draped in white linen and olive greenery. I'd arrived early, my wine-colored dress catching the light as I smoothed invisible wrinkles from the fabric. It had taken me 3 weeks to find it. Elegant, sophisticated, mother-of-the-bride appropriate, or so I thought. 8 years. That's how long it had been since Robert died, since the semi-truck ran the red light and turned my world into before and after. 8 years of pouring everything into Haley, of making sure she never felt the emptiness that haunted me at 3 a.m. I'd sold my grandmother's pearl necklace for her college textbooks. I'd taken summer school teaching jobs to help with her apartment in grad school. And when she called 6 months ago, voice trembling with joy about Brandon's proposal, I'd quietly transferred $15,000 I didn't have to give. The ballroom hummed with pre-ceremony chatter. Women in sage and cream dresses clustered near the bar. Men in charcoal suits checked their watches. And there I stood, a burgundy stain against their carefully curated palette. I felt the stares before I understood them. A woman in an olive shift dress, Brandon's aunt, I think, leaned toward her companion and whispered. 2 younger women near the gift table glanced my way, eyebrows raised, my chest tightened. Then I saw Brandon's face. He stood at the altar in his tailored tuxedo, looking every inch the successful marketing executive. His jaw tightened when our eyes met. He turned to Haley, resplendent in her ivory gown, and said something low and urgent. My daughter, my baby, the girl I'd raised alone through everything, looked directly at me. Her face transformed from bridal radiance to something hard and cold. She crossed the ballroom in long strides, her train hissing against the polished floor. Conversations died in her wake. Mom, her voice was tight. We need to talk now. Honey, what's wrong? You look beautiful. What are you wearing? She spoke loud enough for the nearest tables to hear. I specifically said white and olive. The whole color scheme, everything is white and olive. Why would you wear that? Heat flooded my face. Haley, I didn't realize. You always do this. Her voice rose higher. Always have to make it about you. Always have to be the center of attention. That's not. I would never. Get out. The words hit like a slap. Get out, Mom. Brandon doesn't even want you here. Her eyes blazed with something I didn't recognize. You're ruining everything, just like you always do. Always controlling, always hovering. This is my day, and you can't even let me have this. The ballroom had gone silent. 200 faces turned toward us. I could feel their pity, their curiosity, their judgment pressing against my skin. I opened my mouth, but nothing came. My hands shook as I clutched my small purse. Haley's chest heaved. Did you hear me? Leave now. Margaret, dear Margaret, half rose from her seat 3 tables away. I caught her eye and shook my head. If I fell apart now, I'd shatter completely. I walked. Each step felt like wading through water. The exit seemed impossibly far. Behind me, whispers erupted like wildfire. Someone coughed. A child asked a loud question that was quickly shushed. The June heat slammed into me as I pushed through the doors. I made it to my car, Robert's old Honda that I'd kept running for a decade. Before my knees gave out, I'd paid for this wedding. I'd addressed the invitations. I'd held Haley when she cried about seating charts and dress fittings, and she'd just thrown me out like garbage in front of everyone we knew. The sobs came from somewhere deep, somewhere I'd kept locked since Robert's funeral. My careful mascara ran in black rivers. My wine-colored dress suddenly felt like a scarlet letter. I don't remember driving home. I only remember sitting in my dark living room at midnight, still in that damn dress, and wondering who I'd become. Monday morning arrived, but I didn't. The alarm screamed at 6:30. I stared at the ceiling, counting cracks in the plaster I'd never noticed before. 12 missed calls blinked on my phone. Margaret, 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 Principal Wong, Margaret again. I turned it face down. The curtains stayed closed, the dishes piled up. I lived in my bathrobe, that wine-colored dress crumpled in the corner where I'd finally torn it off at 3 a.m. Sunday. I replayed it endlessly. Her face, her voice. Get out, Mom. The whispers. Brandon's smirk. Had he planned it? Had they discussed it beforehand? How to remove the embarrassing mother who dared to wear the wrong color Tuesday afternoon? I heard keys in the lock. Evelyn Brooks, I swear to God. Margaret's voice preceded her through the door. She stood in my living room, hands on hips, taking in the disaster, me on the couch, tissues everywhere, half-eaten cereal bowl from yesterday growing crusty on the coffee table. I'm fine, I said automatically. You're a mess. She sat down hard beside me. And you have every right to be. I raised her wrong. I must have good daughters don't. They don't do that to their mothers. Stop! Margaret's voice was sharp. Haley is 28 years old, Evie. She made a choice. A cruel one. But what did I do? Was I too much? Too clingy? She said I was controlling. You weren't controlling. You were present. There's a difference. Margaret grabbed my hand. But honey, you need to hear this. You disappeared into being her mother. When's the last time you did something just for you? I opened my mouth to argue, but nothing came. When had I done something for myself? The question hung in the stale air. Margaret made me shower, made me eat actual food, made me open the windows. Even though I protested, the light hurt my eyes. Before she left, she said something that burrowed under my skin. You can't live your whole life as somebody's satellite. That night, alone again, I pulled out photo albums. Robert and me on our honeymoon, both grinning like idiots. Haley's first day of kindergarten, her high school graduation, her college acceptance letter, in every single photo. I looked, diminished, faded like I was slowly erasing myself year by year. There was one exception, a picture from when I was 18, before Robert, before everything. I was holding my father's old Nikon, laughing at something off camera. That girl looked alive. When had I stopped being her? I thought about my mother, Catherine. She'd collected antique furniture her whole life, beautiful pieces she'd polished and preserved. After she died, I'd kept every piece, stored them carefully, rarely used them. A museum for her life while mine gathered dust. Wednesday, I called in sick again. Thursday too, but Friday, something shifted. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and really looked at myself. 54 years old. Graying hair I kept dyeing brown, because Haley once said it made me look old. 20 pounds heavier than I wanted because cooking for one felt pointless. So I ate whatever was easiest. Lines around my eyes from worry, not laughter. Who are you? I asked my reflection. She didn't have an answer, but she was tired. Tired of being small, tired of apologizing for existing, tired of building her entire identity around someone who'd just thrown her away like trash. I picked up my phone, ignored the new messages from Haley's number. 2 of them, probably wanting something, not apologizing. Instead, I Googled, how to sell antique furniture, Austin, Texas. 30 results appeared. I clicked the first one. Margaret was right. I'd been someone's satellite for so long. I'd forgotten I could be my own son. Maybe it was time to remember. Maybe it was time to burn. The man from Heritage Auctions had kind eyes. James Chen arrived Monday morning with a leather portfolio and an expert's careful touch. He moved through my living room like a curator, running his fingers along the grain of my mother's Edwardian credenza, examining the joinery on the Victorian sideboard. These are exceptional pieces, he said softly. Your mother had impeccable taste. They were her pride and joy. My voice caught. She spent 40 years collecting them. He straightened, meeting my eyes. And now they're mine, and I don't want them anymore. It sounded harsh out loud, disloyal, but the truth was, I'd kept these pieces out of obligation, not love. They were beautiful prisons, each one a reminder that I was supposed to preserve the past, honor it, never move beyond it. James worked for 2 hours, photographing, measuring, making notes. Finally, he sat across from me at the dining table, another antique I'd never chosen. Conservatively, at auction, I'd estimate 34 to 38,000. The credenza alone should fetch 12. The number stole my breath. I'd had no idea. There's one thing you should know, James continued. Pieces like this, they're irreplaceable. Once they're sold, they're gone. I have to ask, are you certain? I thought about my mother's face when she'd acquired that credenza. Her joy, her pride. Would she see this as betrayal? Did your mother collect these for herself or for posterity? James asked gently. For herself, I admitted. She loved them. Then she understood that objects exist to enrich lives, not trap them. He closed his portfolio. My mother sold her restaurant 2 years ago, the one her parents started, the one she ran for 40 years. Everyone said she was crazy, but she took that money and traveled to every country she'd ever dreamed of seeing. He smiled. She called me from Marrakesh last month, said it was the first time she felt like herself in decades. I signed the consignment agreement with shaking hands. The auction happened the following week. I didn't attend. Couldn't bear to watch strangers cart away pieces of my mother's carefully constructed world. But when James called with the final number, 36,500, I felt something unexpected. Relief. After his commission, 30,700 remained, more money than I'd seen in years. That night I opened my laptop. Margaret had left earlier, squeezing my hand and saying, "Your mother would be proud." I typed into the search bar, "Flights to New York City." The screen filled with possibilities. JFK, LaGuardia, Newark, dates and times and prices. I'd never been to New York, had always wanted to. Robert used to promise we'd go someday. Someday became never. $480 for a round-trip ticket. My finger hovered over the mouse. This was crazy, wasn't it? 54-year-old high school literature teachers didn't just fly to New York alone. Did they? But who'd made that rule? Who said I couldn't? I clicked confirm purchase before I could talk myself out of it. Then I searched. Manhattan hotels, too expensive. Manhattan hostels, too depressing. Manhattan budget accommodations. Found a modest place near Central Park. $70 a night. Booked 7 nights. My heart hammered. What was I doing? I was doing something for myself. Finally, I kept searching. Things to do in New York, Lisbon, Portugal flights, photography workshops, NYC. That last one made me pause. Photography, I hadn't touched a camera since college, since my father's old Nikon broke and life became too busy to replace it. But looking at the workshop description, urban photography intensive, learning to see, something stirred. $450 for 3 days. I booked it when I finally closed the laptop at midnight. I'd spent $3,500 on myself, for myself, no asking permission, no justifying to anyone. I pulled out my suitcase and started packing. Somewhere in Austin, Haley was living her new married life, without me, without guilt. And somewhere in New York, a version of myself I'd lost decades ago was waiting to be found. New York smelled like hot asphalt and possibility. I emerged from the subway at 72nd Street into a river of humanity. Everyone moved with purpose, with places to be, people to see. Nobody looked at me. Nobody cared that I was a middle-aged woman from Texas wearing sensible shoes and carrying too much anxiety in her shoulders. It was the most liberating feeling of my life. My hotel room was tiny, barely space for the bed and my suitcase. But the window looked onto a tree-lined street, and I could hear the city breathing. I unpacked, showered, and stared at myself in the mirror. The same woman from Austin looked back, but something in her eyes had shifted the first morning. I walked, just walked, through Central Park, where joggers and lovers and lonely people all shared the same paths. Down Fifth Avenue, where buildings scraped the sky, past street musicians and hot dog vendors and a man selling books from a folding table. I found BUH Photo Video by accident, following a woman with a professional camera. The store was massive, overwhelming. Walls of equipment I didn't understand, languages I didn't speak. I stood frozen near the entrance. First time, a man about my age, name tag reading David, smiled kindly. "Is it that obvious?" "Only because you have the same look I did 20 years ago." He gestured at the vast space. "What are you looking for?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Something. Mine." He didn't laugh. Instead, he asked questions. What drew my eye? What moments did I wish I could capture? What made me stop and stare? Faces. I heard myself say. People's faces, the stories in them. David nodded slowly. You're not looking for equipment, you're looking for permission. The words hit home. He told me about the urban photography intensive starting the next day. Marcus Johnson teaches it, best instructor in the city for portraiture. He doesn't teach cameras, he teaches seeing. I signed up before I could overthink it. Tuesday morning, I met Marcus and 7 other students in a classroom that smelled like coffee and ambition. Marcus was intimidating. Award-winning photographer, work in museums, the kind of person I'd never imagined learning from. Photography isn't about expensive equipment, he said, pacing. It's about paying attention. Most people look but don't see. We're going to change that. He sent us to Washington Square Park with one assignment: photograph a stranger's story. My hands shook as I approached an elderly woman feeding pigeons. She wore black, her face mapped with wrinkles deep as canyons. I asked permission in a voice that trembled. She smiled. You're nervous? Good, means you care. Through the viewfinder, I saw her differently. Not just old, but lived. Every line told a story. Loss and laughter. Decades compressed into the corners of her eyes. Click. Marcus studied my photo that afternoon, with the rest of the class projected on screen. He was quiet for a long moment. This, he finally said, is someone who sees. You captured loneliness and contentment in the same frame. That's rare. Something in my chest cracked open. The next 2 days blurred together. Brooklyn at golden hour, the High Line at dawn, Chinatown's chaotic beauty. I photographed musicians and merchants, mothers and misfits. Each click felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I'd filed away under frivolous and selfish on the last day. Marcus pulled me aside. What are you going to do with this? What do you mean? This gift, this eye, you going back to Texas to let it die? I'm a high school teacher. I have a mortgage. I can't just... I didn't ask what you can't do. His gaze was steady. I asked what you're going to do. He handed me his card. Send me your work. I mean it. My last night in Manhattan, I sat in my tiny hotel room reviewing photos. Some were technically imperfect, focus soft, exposure off, but in each one, I saw the world through my eyes. Not Haley's, not Robert's, mine. I booked a flight to Lisbon for the following week. Lisbon tasted like salt air and lost time. I arrived at night. When the city glowed amber under ancient streetlights, the taxi climbed impossible hills to Alfama, the old Moorish quarter where my grandparents had lived before immigrating to Texas in 1952. My rental apartment was tiny. 4 flights of narrow stairs. I fell asleep to the distant sound of fado music drifting through open windows. Morning brought sunshine that felt different here, golden, almost liquid. I walked the labyrinth of Alfama's streets with no destination, just following wherever my feet led. Laundry hung between buildings like flags. Old women in black dresses sat on stoops, watching the world with eyes that had seen everything. I photographed it all. On my second day, I found a Rua de São Miguel using an old address my mother had written in a journal I'd discovered after she died. The building still stood, faded yellow plaster and green shutters. Stubbornly beautiful, an elderly woman sat outside on a folding chair, hands busy with crochet. Desculpe, I began in terrible Portuguese. My grandparents, Teresa and Manuel Cardoso, lived here. Her face transformed. Teresa, meu Deus, you're Teresa's granddaughter, Dona Amelia. She insisted I call her that. Took my hand and didn't let go for the next 3 hours. We sat in her dark, cluttered apartment drinking strong coffee while she showed me photographs I'd never seen. Your avó, she had hands of an artist, Amelia said, pointing to a young woman in a 1940s photograph. Always painting, always with her watercolors. Painting. I stared at the photo. My mother never mentioned. Manuel didn't approve. Said art didn't put food on the table. Amelia's expression soured. Teresa stopped when they married, packed it all away. Then they left for America and, she shrugged. Dreams get lost in translation. No, she showed me more photos. Teresa young and vibrant, holding paintbrushes. Teresa on her wedding day, beautiful but somehow subdued. Teresa boarding the ship to America, looking back at Lisbon with an expression I recognized. Loss, of self, of possibility. She left things behind, Amelia said. Wait here. She returned with a wooden box, dust thick on its lid. Inside, watercolors, dozens of them, Lisbon streets, faces, self-portraits of a young woman who looked freer than any photo I'd seen of my grandmother. These are mine, I whispered. She would want you to have them. That night, I spread the watercolors across my apartment floor and cried. Not just for Teresa, who'd buried her art to be a proper wife. Not just for my mother Catherine, who'd collected beautiful things but never created them. But for myself, for all the years I'd done the same. Silenced my own voice to amplify everyone else's. I called Margaret, voice thick with tears. You found more than your grandparents, didn't you? She said gently. I found a pattern. 3 generations of women who disappeared. But you're still here. Evie, you can choose different. The next days, I explored Lisbon with new purpose. I photographed women, vendors at the market, tourists with their families, elderly ladies feeding cats in the squares. Each face a story of choices made and unmade. On my last evening, I climbed to Miraduro de Santa Lucia at sunset. The Tagus River spread below like molten gold. I set up my camera on the wall and took a self-portrait. Me in the dying light, Teresa's watercolors in my bag, lines of age and grief and new determination in my face. I'd spent 54 years being what everyone needed, wife, mother, teacher, always in service, never in command of my own life. But standing there in the city my grandmother had loved and lived, I made a choice. I wouldn't be another woman in my family who sacrificed herself on the altar of everyone else's expectations. I would break the pattern. I would live for both of us, for Teresa who couldn't, and for the girl I'd been before I learned to make myself small. When I boarded the plane home 2 days later, I wasn't the same woman who'd left Austin. I was someone who remembered how to want things. I'd been home 3 weeks when Haley finally called. It was Thursday night, nearly midnight. I was editing photos at my kitchen table, the table I'd moved from the dining room because I'd sold the antique one. My laptop glowed with images from Lisbon, women's faces, cobblestone streets, Teresa's watercolors that I'd carefully photographed. The phone's vibration startled me. Haley's name on the screen sent adrenaline through my veins. I almost didn't answer. Mom? No greeting, no. How are you? Just that flat, expectant tone I'd heard 1,000 times before. Haley, we need to talk about the money from Grandma's furniture. My hand tightened on the phone. What about it? Brandon and I found a house in Tarrytown. It's perfect, but we need $50,000 for the down payment. We only have 20. A pause. You got at least 30 from those antiques. So you figured I'd give it to you. Well, yeah, I mean, eventually it would all be mine anyway, right? This just makes sense. Investments and all that. I closed my laptop slowly. Through the window, Austin sprawled under orange streetlights. The same city, but I was seeing it through different eyes now. I spent that money, Haley. On what? Trips? New York? Lisbon? A photography course? Equipment. The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. You're kidding. Her voice went sharp. Mom, you're 54 years old. You spent thousands of dollars taking pictures. Each word landed like a slap. Yes, I did. That's insane. That's so selfish. She was warming up now, voice rising. You should be thinking about downsizing, about helping your family. Brandon and I are trying to build a life and you're off playing photographer. When did you get so self-centered? Something in me that had been bent for decades suddenly straightened. No. What? No, Haley. I won't give you money for a house. Are you serious right now? After everything after everything you did, the words came out harder than I intended. After you threw me out of your wedding, after months of silence, you call asking for $50,000 like it's owed to you. Oh my God. Are you still on that? The wedding thing was, you wore the wrong color, Mom. You knew the palette. You always have to make everything about you. I wore a wine-colored dress to my daughter's wedding, and you screamed at me in front of 200 people. That wasn't about a color, Haley. Brandon said you'd play victim. He said you'd throw that in my face. Her voice turned cold. You know what? He was right about you. You're manipulative. You smother me. Then when I try to have my own life, you guilt-trip me. I thought of Teresa's watercolors, hidden for decades, of my mother's antiques, preserved but never enjoyed, of all the ways women in my family had made themselves smaller. I'm sorry you feel that way, I said quietly, but my answer is still no. For the first time in 28 years, I'm using my money for myself. This is unbelievable when you snap out of this midlife crisis. Don't come crying to me. Haley! The line went dead. I sat at the kitchen table, phone still pressed to my ear, shaking. The cruel part was how familiar this felt. Haley taking, me giving, the pattern worn smooth by repetition. Except this time, I'd broken it. I called Margaret. She answered on the first ring. She asked for money, didn't she? $50,000 for a house. And you said, no. Margaret's exhale was pure relief. Good God, Evie, good. She said I was selfish, that I was having a midlife crisis. You know what's actually selfish. Never once asking how you were doing, never apologizing, just assuming your bank account was hers for the taking. Margaret's voice softened. You did the right thing. After we hung up, I opened my laptop, pulled up the self-portrait from Lisbon, me in golden light, lines of age visible, eyes clear and determined. I'd thought that woman was just visiting, but she was moving in permanently. 3 months passed like a held breath finally released. October arrived with cooler temperatures and changing leaves. I'd settled into a rhythm that felt almost foreign in its selfishness. Teaching during the day, photography classes twice a week at Austin Community College, weekend shoots with a small group of other adult students. I was working on a series I'd titled Women and Legacies, portraits that explored the stories written in faces and hands and postures. Daniel Kim, my instructor, had suggested I submit to a group show in December. You have something real here, he'd said, studying my prints. Don't hide it. I hadn't heard from Haley since that phone call. Sometimes I'd see her active on social media, photos of her and Brandon at restaurants, carefully curated images of marital bliss. Each one was a small knife, but I'd learned to let the pain pass through instead of holding it. Margaret said that was gross. I called it survival. I was researching flights to Oaxaca for Thanksgiving, Day of the Dead celebrations. The photographs would be incredible. When my phone rang at 11:15 on a Tuesday night, Haley's name on the screen made my stomach drop. Hello? The sound that came through wasn't words. It was raw anguish, the kind that strips away all pretense, sobbing so violent I could barely make out her voice. Haley, what happened? Are you hurt? Mom? A gasp, more crying. I can't. Take a breath. Tell me what happened. The story came in jagged pieces. Brandon's affair with a co-worker named Ashley. 6 months long, starting before the wedding. Messages Haley found on their shared iPad while looking for a recipe. The confrontation tonight. Brandon not even bothering to deny it. He said marrying me was a mistake. Her voice cracked. He said he only proposed because his parents expected it. He wants a divorce. Mom, we've been married 3 months and he wants a divorce. I closed my eyes. Part of me wanted to say I told you so. The man who'd made my daughter scream at me in front of everyone, who'd whispered poison in her ear, who'd demanded she choose between us. He'd shown his character from the start, but she was sobbing, and she was still my daughter. Where are you? Motel near the airport. He emptied our bank account. $8,000. Just gone. He took his car. The apartment's in both our names, but he changed the locks. His father's attorney called me. They're preparing divorce papers. She'd been married 93 days. I have $140 left. I can't afford another night here. I can't afford anything. Her voice went small. And I know I don't deserve to ask after everything I said, everything I did, Haley. But I don't have anyone else, can I? Could I stay with you? Just until I figure something out. The words hung between us, heavy with history. The easy thing would be to say yes immediately, to rush to her rescue, to slip back into the comfortable pattern of mother fixes, everything. But I'd spent 3 months learning that easy and right weren't the same thing. You can come, I said slowly. But Haley, things are different now. I'm different. I know. I won't drop everything to fix this for you. I won't sacrifice my life to cushion yours. I know, she whispered. I understand. Do you? Because 3 months ago you called me selfish for spending my own money on my own dreams. Silence. Then quietly. I was wrong. Brandon was in my head. telling me you were toxic, that you wanted to control me. I believed him. I'm sorry. The apology was so unexpected I almost missed it. Come home, I heard myself say. We'll figure this out. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen, my space that I'd reclaimed, and felt the weight of the decision. I could help her without losing myself. I could be compassionate without being consumed. At least I hoped I could. I called Margaret. She needs a place to stay. And you said yes. I did. Was that stupid? No, Margaret said. But Evie, don't forget who you've become. Don't let her pain make you disappear again. I won't. I meant it. I prepared the guest room, not her old bedroom, which was now my studio. The distinction mattered. Haley arrived at 7:30 Wednesday morning looking like a ghost of herself. She'd lost weight. She didn't have to lose. Her hair hung limp, unwashed. The expensive designer bags Brandon had bought her seemed to mock her with their pristine leather while she looked broken. The hug was awkward. We'd forgotten how to touch each other. Your old room, she started, is my studio now. You'll take the guest room. Something flickered across her face. Surprise, hurt. But she just nodded and followed me upstairs. The first few days, we moved around each other like strangers. I kept my routine. Up at 6, work by 8, home at 4, photography class Tuesday and Thursday evenings, dinner with Margaret on Fridays. I cooked meals but didn't hover, made coffee but didn't deliver it to her room. I could feel Haley watching me, trying to figure out the rules of this new dynamic. On Friday night, she asked if I'd stay home instead of going out. I have plans with Margaret, but I thought maybe we could. You're welcome to come with us. We're getting Thai food and watching a movie at her place. She declined. I went anyway. When I came home at midnight, Haley's light was still on. I didn't knock. Saturday morning, I was at the kitchen table editing photos when she appeared, bleary-eyed at 11. You're working, she observed. I am. She poured coffee, sat across from me, actually looked at my screen. What are those? My project for the group show in December. Women and Legacies. I watched her study the images. Elderly Portuguese women, the market vendor in Austin, my own face in that Lisbon sunset. These are really good, Mom. The compliment landed strangely. When had Haley last seen me as capable of something beyond maternal duties? Thank you. Tell me about them. So I did. About Teresa's watercolors. About the pattern of disappearing women. About trying to document strength and resilience instead of just pain. I didn't know about great-grandma Teresa, Haley said quietly. That she painted. Neither did I until I went looking. She was quiet for a long moment. When did you start this, the photography? In New York, after the wedding. The unspoken thing sat between us like a third person at the table. I bought the dress Brandon wanted, she said suddenly. For after the ceremony, the one he liked, not the one I liked. I looked up from my laptop. He chose the venue, the colors, the band. Every time I had an opinion, he'd say I was being difficult. Her eyes filled. And I kept thinking if I just made him happy enough, he'd love me the way I needed. Haley, you did that, didn't you, with me? Made yourself small to make me happy. The truth of it hung in the air. Yes, I admitted. I did. Why? Because after your father died, you were all I had, and I was terrified of losing you too. So I made myself whatever you needed, even when it meant losing myself. She wiped her eyes. Was I awful to you growing up? I thought about it carefully. No, you were young. You didn't know what you didn't see. I didn't let you see it. But at the wedding, you made a choice. And it hurt. But maybe I needed that hurt to wake up. We sat in silence while morning light filled the kitchen. I don't know who I am, Haley whispered. Without Brandon, without school, without you fixing everything. I'm 28 and I have no idea who I am. Then maybe it's time to find out. How did you do it? Figure out who you were. I'm still figuring it out. But I started by doing something just for me. Something that scared me. She looked at my photographs again. I used to draw in high school before Brandon, before everything. I was actually pretty good. So draw again. It's too late. I'm not Haley. I started photography at 54. It's never too late. Something shifted in her expression. Hope, maybe, or permission. That night we ordered pizza and watched old movies, not like before. Not with me serving her, anticipating her needs, just two women sharing space. learning to be people to each other instead of roles. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and real was something we'd never been before. 3 weeks after Haley moved in, I woke to find her sitting at the kitchen table at 6 in the morning. The sight stopped me in the doorway. My daughter was never an early riser. Throughout high school, I'd had to drag her from bed. In college, she'd missed more 8 a.m. classes than she'd attended. Even during those first awful days after Brandon left, she'd slept until noon, hiding from reality under covers. But here she was, fully dressed in jeans and an old sweater I recognized from her college days. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. No makeup, just Haley, stripped of all the polish Brandon had preferred. "Couldn't sleep," she said when I appeared, surprised. She'd made coffee, a pot for both of us, not just herself, another small shift in the tectonic plates of our relationship. I poured a cup and joined her at the table. Through the window, Austin was still dark, stars fading to that peculiar gray that comes just before dawn. The neighborhood was silent except for a distant dog barking and the hum of the refrigerator. "Tell me about the show," she said suddenly, "the one in December." I wrapped my hands around my mug, feeling its warmth. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. What you're showing, why you chose those pieces, what it means to you." So I opened my laptop and showed her. The Gallery 4 Seasons, a beautiful space in downtown Austin with exposed brick and perfect lighting. The group exhibition Voices in Focus that would feature work from 12 photographers. My series, Women and Legacies, 12 photographs I'd agonized over selecting from hundreds of images. I pulled up the files. The Italian woman feeding pigeons in Washington Square Park, her face a map of loss and contentment. The Portuguese widows in Alfama, dressed in black but laughing. Teresa's watercolors spread across my apartment floor in Lisbon. The market vendor in Austin, hands weathered but strong. Haley studied each one carefully, really looking. When had she last looked at anything I'd done with genuine interest? She stopped on the self-portrait from Lisbon, me in the golden hour light, standing before a mirror in my rental apartment. The photo captured everything. The lines around my eyes, the gray roots I'd finally stopped dyeing, the cesarean scar visible where my shirt had ridden up. But more than that, it captured something in my expression, a mixture of grief and determination, of endings and beginnings. "You look so sad here," Haley whispered, "and so strong. How can someone look both at once?" "That's what I'm trying to capture," I said. "That complicated truth about being a woman, about surviving things that should break you, but don't, about carrying pain and still choosing to live fully." She scrolled through the other images slowly, pausing on each one. She stopped at a photograph I'd taken of Margaret in her garden, hands covered in soil, laughing at something off camera. Margaret looked completely herself in that moment, unguarded, joyful, present. "You see people," Haley said quietly. "Really see them, not just how they look, but who they are." "When did you learn to do that?" "I always could," I admitted. "I just forgot I was allowed to look, forgot I was allowed to see anything beyond what everyone needed from me." She closed the laptop gently, as if the images were precious. She wrapped both hands around her coffee mug and stared into its depths like she might find answers there. The silence stretched between us, not uncomfortable exactly, but heavy with unspoken things. I waited. I'd learned patience in these weeks of living together carefully, like two people navigating a room full of broken glass. "I've been seeing a therapist," she finally said. "Through the university's sliding scale program, Dr. Chen, she's helping me understand things." I nodded, encouraging. "We've been talking about patterns, about how I choose relationships, about boundaries and codependency, and—" She took a shaky breath. "About you and me." My chest tightened, but I kept my voice steady. "What about us? She asked me last week to describe you, and I realized I couldn't. Not really." Tears gathered in her eyes. "I could describe what you did for me, how you made my lunches all through school, even high school when other kids bought cafeteria food, how you paid for things without complaining, how you showed up at every event, every recital, every parent-teacher conference. But who you are, what you like, what you dream about, what music you listen to when you're alone." The tears spilled over now, running down her cheeks unchecked. I had no idea. 28 years as your daughter, and I couldn't tell Dr. Chen a single thing about who you actually are as a person. Haley, no, please, let me finish. She wiped her face roughly with her sleeve. I need to say this, all of it. I nodded, throat tight. At the wedding, Brandon had been working on me for months, telling me you were suffocating, that you wanted to control my life, that you couldn't let me grow up. And part of me believed him because, she paused, struggling, because it was easier than admitting the truth. What truth? That I'd used you? That I'd taken everything you offered and never once asked what it cost you? Never once wondered if you were happy or lonely, or had dreams you'd given up? I treated you like a service, Mom, like a resource to be tapped when I needed something. Her voice cracked. And I was terrified of seeing you as a whole person, because then I'd have to feel guilty for only ever seeing you as a function. The honesty was brutal. Raw in a way we'd never been with each other. When you wore that dress, the wine one, Brandon lost it. We were getting ready and he saw you arrive through the window. He said it would ruin the aesthetic, that everyone would talk about you instead of us, that you were doing it deliberately to steal attention. She was crying harder now. He threatened to leave, said if you stayed, he'd walk out, and God, Mom, I chose him. I chose a man I'd known 2 years over the woman who raised me alone after Dad died, who sold her jewelry for my college tuition, who never once made her pain my problem. I reached across the table and took her hand. It was cold, trembling. And then months later I called you, not to apologize, not to ask how you were doing or if you were okay after I'd humiliated you in front of everyone we knew. I called to demand $50,000 like you owed it to me, like your money was mine by right. She looked at me with red, swollen eyes. You were right to say no. I was monstrous. You were hurt, I said gently, and manipulated and young. I was old enough to know better. She squeezed my hand hard. I'm 28 years old. I'm not a child. I made those choices. Brandon influenced me, yes, but I'm the one who screamed at you. I'm the one who demanded money. I'm the one who spent my entire life taking and never giving back. She pulled her hand away and covered her face, shoulders shaking with sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep and long buried. Mom, I am so sorry. I'm sorry for the wedding, for the things I said, for the phone call, for every time I treated you like you existed to serve me, for never once asking what you needed, for not knowing you had dreams because I never bothered to ask, for letting you disappear into being my mother until there was nothing else left of you. I'd imagined this apology 100 times during sleepless nights. Imagined it would feel triumphant, vindicating, a moment of righteous satisfaction where I could say, I told you so, or make her feel the full weight of what she'd done. Instead, it just felt sad. Sad for all the years we'd wasted performing roles instead of building a relationship. Sad for the version of me who'd allowed it, who'd sacrificed herself so completely there was nothing left to know. Sad for both of us, trapped in patterns neither of us had understood until they'd nearly destroyed us. I forgive you, I said quietly. She looked up, surprised. But Haley, I can't go back to who I was. That version of me, the one who existed only as your mother. She's gone. I won't resurrect her, I can't. I don't want you to. Haley wiped her face with both hands. I want to know who you are now. Actually know you as a person, not a function. I want to learn what you love and what scares you and what makes you laugh. I want to know about your dreams for Japan and why you chose photography and what it felt like to discover Teresa's watercolors. She took a deep, shuddering breath. Is it too late for that? To actually know each other? I thought about Teresa's watercolors, hidden in a box for decades because her husband didn't approve, about my mother's antiques, preserved but never enjoyed, never lived with, about 3 generations of women who'd made themselves smaller and smaller until they'd nearly disappeared, about patterns that could be broken if someone was brave enough. It's not too late, I said. It's never too late. We sat together as sunrise began to paint the kitchen walls gold. Outside, Austin was waking up, cars starting, birds beginning their morning songs, the world continuing its relentless forward motion. Inside, something old finally died, so something new could begin. 2 women, mother and daughter, learning to see each other clearly for the first time. The gallery buzzed with voices and wine glasses. with laughter and the particular energy of people pretending to understand art, while actually feeling it in places they didn't have words for. I stood near the entrance of Four Seasons Gallery, one hand clutching a glass of champagne I'd barely touched, the other smoothing invisible wrinkles from my simple black dress. Margaret had helped me choose it last week, elegant but understated, the kind of thing that let the work speak instead of the person wearing it. My hair fell loose around my shoulders, silver strands catching the gallery lights. I'd stopped dyeing it in September, let the gray grow out naturally. At first it had felt like surrender. Now it felt like honesty. This was me, 54 years old, marked by time and choices, no longer hiding. Women and legacies occupied the entire east wall. 12 photographs, each 16 by 20 inches, matted in simple black frames. Each had a small brass plaque with a title and a brief story. Not about the subjects, but about what their faces had taught me about strength and survival. My hands hadn't stopped shaking since the doors opened 90 minutes ago. The turnout was better than I'd expected. Maybe 80 people wandered through the space, studying photographs by 12 different artists. My fellow students from Daniel Kim's class had brought friends and family. Some of my colleagues from Westlake High had shown up, including Principal Wong, who kept hugging me and saying how proud she was. There were strangers too, people who'd seen the exhibition advertised, who'd come because they loved photography or because it was Saturday night in Austin and they wanted something to do. Those were the ones who made me most nervous. They had no obligation to be kind. Daniel Kim approached with a woman in an expensive cream blazer and perfectly cut gray hair. Everything about her screamed money and taste. "Evelyn, this is Jennifer Moss. She owns Moss Gallery in Hyde Park." Jennifer extended a hand with rings that probably cost more than my car. But her grip was warm, her smile genuine. "Your work is remarkable," she said without preamble. "The way you capture resilience without romanticizing struggle. It's rare. Most photographers either make suffering look noble or they exploit it. You do neither. You just show truth." The compliment landed so directly I almost stepped back. Thank you, that's what I was trying to do. This one especially," she gestured to my Lisbon self-portrait. "Most self-portraits by women are either self-deprecating or defiant. This is just honest, vulnerable, and strong simultaneously. It's remarkable." She handed me a business card. "I'd love to discuss a solo show. My gallery specializes in emerging artists over 50, women who found their voices later in life. I think your work would resonate with my collectors. A solo show, my work, an entire gallery wall of my own." "I'd like that very much," I managed, hoping my voice didn't shake as much as it felt like it did. After Jennifer left, Margaret materialized at my elbow with fresh champagne. "Stop looking so terrified." "You earned this." "Did I?" She rolled her eyes. "You flew to New York alone at 54. You went to Lisbon to find a grandmother you never met. You learned an entirely new art form from scratch. You rebuilt your entire life from the ground up after your daughter publicly humiliated you." She clinked her glass against mine. "Yeah, Evie, you earned it." Principal Wong bought the photograph of the market vendor, said it would inspire her students to see the dignity in all work. One of Daniel's former students, now a journalist at the Austin American-Statesman, asked to interview me for a feature on adult learners in the arts. A woman whose name I didn't catch spent 20 minutes talking to me about her own mother, who'd given up painting to raise 6 children and always regretted it. "Your work made me want to call her," the woman said, wiping her eyes, "to ask her to show me those old paintings she keeps in the attic. To really see her, that conversation meant more than any sale could have. But through it all, I kept glancing at the door, checking the time, watching. I'd invited Haley, but I hadn't pushed. "If you want to come, I'd love to see you there," I'd said. "But no pressure." She'd nodded, non-committal, and I'd tried not to feel disappointed. At 8:30, when the crowd was thinning and I'd almost given up, the gallery door opened and Haley walked in. She looked different. Her hair was shorter, cut to her shoulders in a style that actually suited her face. Not the long, highlighted waves Brandon had preferred. No heavy makeup, just mascara and lip gloss. She wore jeans. Good ones, but still jeans, and a simple emerald blouse. She carried a worn leather portfolio under her arm. Our eyes met across the gallery. She smiled, tentative but real. I navigated through the remaining crowd to her, my heart doing complicated things in my chest. You came. Of course I came. She looked around, taking in the exposed brick walls, the track lighting, the people studying photographs with wine glasses in hand. Mom, this is incredible. This is really happening. It's really happening, I agreed, still not quite believing it myself. We walked the exhibition together slowly. She stopped at each photograph, reading the accompanying text, asking questions. Real questions, not the performative kind. People ask when they're being polite. When did I take this? What drew me to that particular moment? What was I feeling when I pressed the shutter? Why black and white for some but color for others? She stood longest in front of my Lisbon self-portrait. A couple beside us, young, maybe in their 30s, commented quietly, "That one just hits you." "Doesn't it?" the woman said. "The way she's looking at herself? Like she's seeing someone she lost and found at the same time?" Haley nodded, not taking her eyes from the photograph. "Yeah, exactly that." When the couple moved on, Haley turned to me. "I need to tell you something, a few things, actually." My stomach tightened reflexively. Even now, even after our morning conversation weeks ago, part of me still expected bad news from her. "I enrolled at Austin Community College, starting in January." She clutched the portfolio tighter. "Graphic design program, 2-year associate degree." Pride bloomed warm in my chest. "Haley, that's wonderful." And I got a part-time internship at a small agency downtown, Clayton Design Co. It's just filing and answering phones mostly. But they said if I prove myself, they might let me work on actual projects. It doesn't pay much, but combined with the barista job, I can cover rent and tuition. "Wait, rent?" She smiled, nervous but excited. The divorce finalized last Wednesday. Brandon was surprisingly reasonable once his lawyer realized I wasn't asking for alimony, just my fair share of what we'd put into the apartment. I used my portion, $23,000 after legal fees, to put first, last, and deposit on a studio in South Congress. "You got your own place?" "I did." She met my eyes. "I move in next weekend." "It's tiny, like insanely tiny. The kitchen is basically a hot plate and a mini fridge, but it's mine. My name on the lease, my choices on the walls." "I'm so proud of you," I said, and meant it with every cell in my body. "You inspired me. Watching you rebuild everything from nothing, from worse than nothing, from humiliation and loss. I realized I'm only 28. If you can start over at 54, I can start now." She paused. "I need to learn to stand on my own, really stand, not leaning on Brandon, not leaning on you, just learning to hold myself up." We stood together looking at my self-portrait, two women at different stages of the same journey towards selfhood. "There's one more thing," Haley said quietly. She gestured to the photograph. "I want to buy this one for my new apartment." "Haley, you don't have to." "I want to." Her voice was firm. "I need it." Actually, I want to hang it where I'll see it every morning, to remember that it's never too late, that the woman I thought had failed me, the one I humiliated and abandoned, turned out to be the strongest person I know. She pulled out her phone. "I already checked the price. I have enough." The gallery assistant placed a small red dot beside the frame. "Sold. Thank you," Haley whispered, her eyes bright with tears, "for not giving up on me, even when I gave you every reason to." "You're my daughter," I said simply. "That didn't change, but the way we love each other did." She wiped her eyes. "It's better now. Harder but better, more honest." After the gallery closed at 10, Margaret, Haley, and I went to a 24-hour diner on South Congress that served breakfast at all hours and played old country music on a jukebox that probably predated me. We ordered pancakes and eggs and laughed about everything and nothing. Margaret's retirement plans to travel through South America, Haley's terror about her first design class, my upcoming solo show with Jennifer Moss that still didn't feel real. "Where are you thinking for your next trip?" Haley asked, pouring syrup over her pancakes in that excessive way she'd done since childhood. "Japan, April probably, cherry blossom season." I pulled up some research photos on my phone. "Kyoto, Tokyo, maybe some smaller towns if I have time." "Will you send me photos?" "Of course." She hesitated, then said, "Maybe sometime. Not this trip. Obviously, since I'm just getting stable. But maybe sometime we could travel together. When I'm ready, when we're both ready. The offer settled between us like a gift. "I'd like that," I said. "Whenever you're ready." Later, driving home alone through Austin's warm December night, 68 degrees, absurd for winter even by Texas standards, I thought about the woman I'd been exactly 1 year ago. She'd worn a wine-colored dress to her daughter's wedding and been destroyed by rejection. She'd existed only in relation to others, wife, mother, teacher, never as herself. She'd been so desperate to be needed that she'd erased herself completely. That woman had to die for this version to live. At home, I poured a glass of wine and opened my laptop to photos Margaret had taken at the exhibition. People viewing my work with genuine interest, Haley standing in front of my self-portrait, seeing her mother clearly for the first time, my own reflection in the gallery window, silver-haired, lined, smiling, 54 years old, and I'd finally figured out how to be whole. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcos Johnson. "My teacher from New York. Saw your show on Instagram. Told you that you had an eye. Keep shooting." I smiled and texted back, not planning to stop. Outside my window, Austin slept. Inside, I planned my future. Japan in April. Haley's move next weekend where I'd help but not take over. The solo show with Jennifer that would require 30 new photographs. I opened a fresh document and typed, "Project Ideas, Japan Series." The cursor blinked on the blank page, waiting for me to fill it just like my life. Blank, terrifying, full of infinite possibility. And for the first time in 54 years, I couldn't wait to see what I'd create.